Hello, my friends, and good afternoon. I am here with some additional news on the Jay-Z, Sean Diddy Combs, Tony Buzbee, Quinn Emanuel legal saga that has just heated up. Jay-Z's attorneys have written to the court. They've noted some glaring inaccuracies in some of Tony Buzbee's claims against Jay-Z. And if you're all familiar with the history, as we know, Sean Diddy Combs is in some hot water, both at the federal criminal level, where he's being detained in a Brooklyn prison on some federal prosecution for sex trafficking and other alleged crimes, racketeering, things of that nature. He's also facing a slew of civil lawsuits, a number of which have been filed by Tony Buzbee, this Texas personal injury attorney who's really gung-ho. He's a former Marine. He's filed these civil suits against Diddy on behalf of alleged victims. And it was back in October, he sent Jay-Z a demand letter. Tony Buzbee sent Jay-Z a demand letter. He said, like, I'm representing this woman who is claiming that you were involved allegedly with an assault that involved Sean Diddy, and that you are this anonymous John Doe who she's referencing in her claims against Sean Diddy Combs. And Tony Buzbee supposedly invited Jay-Z privately to come sit down for a private meeting, saying my client wants to, I would like to meet with you in hopes of whatever he was in hopes of. And Jay-Z have responded not by caving, not by sitting down with Tony Buzbee, but by filing his own John Doe anonymous lawsuit in Los Angeles against Tony Buzbee and asserting that Tony Buzbee is trying to extort him. He alleged intentional infliction of emotional distress against Tony Buzbee. And Jay-Z went public on his social media saying, I'm cut from a different cloth. I am not what you were expecting, Tony Buzbee, and I'm not going to back down. I'm not going to cave. I'm not going to just shell out money to make you go away. And then in response, Tony Buzbee went ahead and named Jay-Z, like officially named him in a refiled complaint that he filed in New York against Sean Combs and Jay-Z. He has now outed Jay-Z as being the alleged anonymous, previously anonymous celebrity who was allegedly involved in a 2000 MTV Music Awards after party with Sean Combs, where this woman is alleging that she was 13 at the time, and she's alleging that there was some severe misconduct upon her at the hands allegedly of Jay-Z and Sean Combs. And, I always want to make sure I say allegedly, because I want to make clear on this channel that, all individuals are, until they're proven or until there's a fact determination by a judge or a jury, these individuals should not be presumed to be guilty. And we need to be mindful of that. Now, I do have the letter here that Jay-Z's attorney wrote to the court. I'm going to pull it up onto the screen here. This is the letter that his attorney, Alex Spiro, wrote to the court to highlight some glaring inaccuracies that Jay-Z is attempting to point out to the court about what has been said about him. So I want to go ahead and read through some of this with you and break it down from the perspective of evaluating and assessing what's going on here from Jay-Z's perspective, because he has been brought into some very serious allegations by this woman. And it is important that we kind of take a look and see what this letter states. So counsel for Sean Jay-Z Carter told a New York federal judge on Friday that new media reports reveal, quote, glaring inaccuracies in an anonymous woman's allegations against the rapper and fellow music mogul Sean Diddy Combs, suggesting that her attorney, Tony Buzbee, deserves sanctions for failing to vet the claims. So the accusations were the latest in an increasingly hostile battle that has pit Jay-Z and his lawyers at Quinn Emanuel against Tony Buzbee, who is a former Marine, Texas personal injury attorney who has leveled a slew of civil lawsuits since Sean Diddy Combs' arrest on sex trafficking charges this past fall. So Tony Buzbee brought Jay-Z into the fray earlier this month, filing claims that he and Diddy allegedly took turns engaging in alleged misconduct against an unnamed 13-year-old at a MTV Video Music Awards after party in 2000. Jay-Z vehemently denies the claims and launched a counterattack accusing Tony Buzbee of extortion. So Jay-Z doubled down on his defense on Friday by flagging a new interview the anonymous plaintiff gave to NBC News. This report identified a number of inaccuracies in her account of the alleged assault, leading the woman to tell NBC, quote, "I have made some mistakes." The interview so according to the letter that Jay-Z's attorney wrote to this U.S. district judge, Annalisa Torres, quote, "The interview outs plaintiff allegations for what they are, a sham." That's what Jay-Z's lawyer wrote to the federal judge. NBC's report said the plaintiff's father has no recollection of picking her up after the alleged assault, as she had claimed, and that guitarist Benji Madden, who the woman claims to have spoken to at the after party, was on tour in the Midwest at the time. NBC also revealed photos of Sean Combs and Jay-Z at a VMA, Video Music Awards after party at a nightclub, whereas the plaintiff says the assault occurred at a house. Quote, "Even Mr. Buzbee is walking back the complaint he put his name to, excusing these glaring inaccuracies by pointing the finger at the case being referred by another firm who allegedly vetted the story," wrote Alex Spiro, who's Jay-Z's attorney. The complaint filed by plaintiff's attorney Anthony Buzbee therefore had no factual basis whatsoever, alleges Alex Spiro. The heinous allegations against Mr. Carter are patently false, says Jay-Z's attorney. Alex Spiro then said these, quote, "stunning revelations show that Buzbee failed to properly investigate his client's claims before filing a violation of the federal rules of civil procedure." The Quinn Emanuel lawyer, Alex Spiro, added that Tony Buzbee appears to have strategically declined to seek admission in order to avoid sanctions for a complaint that he knew he had no factual basis. In a statement posted Friday to the X, formerly Twitter, account of his company Rock Nation, Jay-Z said the NBC report proves that Tony Buzbee, quote, "filed a false complaint against me in pursuit of money and fame." Quote, "This incident didn't happen, and yet he filed it in court and doubled down in the press. True justice is coming," Jay-Z's statement continued. "This was over before it began. This 1-800 lawyer doesn't realize it yet, but soon," end quote. Spiro added in his own statement that Buzbee's failure to vet the claim is, quote, "stunning," and that his team will take up the matter of additional discipline for Mr. Buzbee and all the lawyers that filed this complaint. So we've got a number of really important things going on here, friends. We've got the lawyers attacking each other. And what's really important to note is that what Jay-Z's attorney, Alex Spiro, is pointing out is that he's pointing out that there's some glaring inaccuracies in the woman's the woman who is alleging to be Jay-Z's victim, the report that she gave to NBC News versus what was put into her complaint that was filed by Tony Buzbee against Jay-Z. So, for example, the woman claims that her father picked her up after the after party where she was allegedly assaulted by Jay-Z. But according to the NBC News report, her father does not have recollection of picking her up. Also, according to the complaint, this woman had said that the alleged assault had occurred at a home, a house, whereas at NBC News report, it's referencing this VMA after party with Jay-Z and Sean Diddy Combs being out at a club. So there are some glaring inconsistencies that are causing Jay-Z's attorney to criticize heavily Tony Buzbee, who has filed this complaint against Jay-Z. And they're saying he didn't do his due diligence. And under the federal rules of civil procedure, this attorney, Tony Buzbee, has an obligation to research, the claims that are being filed on behalf of his client to make sure that he does have factual basis and that he is bringing meritorious claims in good faith. An attorney is not allowed, either under the ethics code nor under the rules of civil procedure, to just file a false claim that they have reason to believe is false or that they have not conducted appropriate due diligence on. Lawyers cannot file baseless claims that they know to be false. They do have an obligation to do due diligence and to research the claims that they file on behalf of their clients. So the Quinn Emanuel firm that represents Jay-Z is saying, we feel that Tony Buzbee violated the rules that govern us as attorneys. We feel that he violated the federal rules of civil procedure that require due diligence and meritorious claims. We are also going to seek additional discipline and sanctions against him. And when an attorney uses the word discipline, they're likely referring to the filing of an ethics complaint against Tony Buzbee by the Texas State Board of Bar Examiner. I wish I could speak today. They're likely talking about filing an ethics complaint against Tony Buzbee with the Texas State Board of Law Examiners. Every state does have a disciplinary review board that reviews the actions of attorneys within their jurisdiction, within their state, and that also addresses any complaints that are filed against attorneys in that state that they have jurisdiction and licensure over. So when it looks like when Quinn Emanuel, Alex Spiro, Jay-Z's attorney, is saying that not only do we feel that Tony Buzbee violated the federal rules of civil procedure, but we are also going to look into additional sanctions and additional discipline for him, it looks like they're strongly considering filing an ethics complaint against Tony Buzbee, which can be a very serious thing. I mean, the ethics board that governs lawyers in each state, they have the authority and the power to reprimand attorneys. They can suspend attorneys. They can terminate your license. They can require you to make restitution for your actions. So, I mean, they have a lot of power because the attorney review boards in each state essentially control your license and ability to practice law. So you do not want to get an ethics complaint filed against you as an attorney. And also it's just a pain. It's just a pain to have to defend against that and to have to express to the disciplinary review board what your actions were and have your actions put before them. So we're going to go back to this letter here that was filed by Jay-Z's attorneys with the federal judge. And it's important to note that Buzbee stood by the complaint that he filed against Jay-Z on Monday, telling Law 360 that the Buzbee law firm interviewed this plaintiff. They ran a background check on her and engaged a, quote, seasoned investigator to corroborate her alleged claims against Jay-Z after the claims were drafted and referred by a different firm. So the investigators' results were consistent with what the client had told us, said Tony Buzbee. Our client remains adamant about her claim. Our conduct has been beyond reproach and will continue to be. Buzbee also noted that he plans to tell the court soon of, quote, extremely troubling conduct on the part of Jay-Z's team. The attorney has previously alleged that private investigators working for Quinn Emanuel are recruiting and paying former Buzbee law firm clients to bring malpractice suits as an act of retaliation and intimidation. Wow. So Tony Buzbee is saying that Jay-Z's legal team at Quinn Emanuel is recruiting and paying former Buzbee law firm clients to bring malpractice suits as an act of retaliation and intimidation. So Buzbee also notes, so the plaintiff is represented by Anthony G. Buzbee, David C. Fortney, Colby Holler, and Crystal Del Toro of the Buzbee law firm, Andrew Van Arsdale of AVA law firm, and Antigon Curis of Curis Law PLLC. So Jay-Z is represented by Alex Spiro, Michael T. Lifrak, and Mari Henderson of Quinn Emanuel, Ugahart and Sullivan LLP, more easily called and abbreviated Quinn Emanuel. The case is Jane Doe v. Sean Combs et al., case number 124CV07975 in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York. And here we go, friends. We're going to go ahead and review this letter that was filed by Jay-Z's attorney with the federal judge. And we're going to walk through it. I'm going to help walk you through it. Sorry, friends. We're going to go ahead and walk you through it so that you can actually see everything that they are alleging in regards to what they say is just absolutely, they're alleging it's absolutely reprehensible conduct on the part of the attorneys for this woman alleged victim of Jay-Z. So let's go ahead, friends. I'm going to make sure that our audio is on because we have had that issue. All right, so I'm going to scroll through here this letter, which is written to the Judge Annalise Torres. She is the judge presiding over this case, although Sean Combs has actually asked to do a little judge shopping. He has been asking for a different attorney in this matter. But right now, Jay-Z's attorneys have written to Judge Torres. It says, we write on behalf of our client, Sean Carter, on a matter of extraordinary and grave importance for the integrity of the proceedings in this case. Today, and this letter, as you can see, is dated December 13th, which was last Friday. So his lawyers write, today at 7:27 p.m. Eastern Standard Times, NBC News reported on an interview that its reporters conducted with the anonymous plaintiff in this case. The interview outs plaintiff's allegations for what they are, a sham. Basic facts in her narrative, the who, what, when, and where are wrong. She claims that her father picked her up after the assault. Her own father denies that ever happened. She claims that she spoke with Benji Madden at the party that night, but he was on tour in the Midwest at the time, forcing her to admit, quote, I have made some mistakes, end quote. I may have made a mistake in identifying. She claims the assault took place at an after party at Mr. Combs' home, but photos that night show Mr. Combs and Mr. Carter at Lotus nightclub for the after party. When pressed, the plaintiff admitted that she was, quote, guessing about key details, including the time it took to reach the venue. She admits she has no single corroborating witness over the last 24 years. Now, I want to talk to you about this. So they're really going hard at her, and they're saying, hey, look, your own father says that he didn't pick you up after the after party that evening. And they're saying you have no singular witness over the last 24 years that could corroborate your story. They're also alleging in this letter, they're also noting that there's some inconsistencies in what she reported to NBC News versus what she alleges in her complaint. And then she did admit to NBC News that I've made some mistakes. I may have made some mistakes in identifying. So like Benji Madden, she initially said that she saw him and spoke with him at the party that evening, where she was allegedly assaulted by Jay-Z, but he was touring in the Midwest. And then, the location of the party, she doesn't, Jay-Z's attorneys are saying she doesn't have that quite right either, because there's photos of Jay-Z and Sean Combs at this Locust nightclub for the after party, and she is claiming that this occurred at Sean Diddy's home. She's saying that I was assaulted at his home. So, and then again, friends, if we really want to digest this, does it necessarily mean that she's wrong? Not necessarily, because after parties could be at numerous locations, or there may have been, let's go back to my home after the after party. So, I mean, listen, it's for them to say, well, she doesn't have a single corroborating witness in the last 24 years. This also did happen quite some time ago. And unless she was 13, she alleges she was 13 at the time that she was allegedly assaulted. There may not have been anyone there that she knew that would be willing to step forward and testify against Jay-Z or Sean Diddy Combs. or become involved in this legal battle or this legal fray right now. So, I mean, I personally don't find that aspect of it as convincing. What do you think, friends? Let me know in the comment. But what I will say is that when you're making these very serious allegations against celebrities, when you're making allegations that you know are going to be very public, and these are public figures, they have reputations, they have businesses, you better darn make sure that your facts are, that you've got your facts straight. Like you better make sure that you've got your facts straight, basically. So, you know, and I realize now, so she says she was 13 at the time. This is 24 years later. So she's about 37, if my math is right. So that has been certainly a long amount of time. There is enough time for memories to wane, for little details to be lost. But what Jay-Z's attorneys are saying in this letter to the court is that these are very basic details, Your Honor. The who, the what, the when, the where. She doesn't have these basic key facts correct. She's inconsistent in the story that she's given about these very basic who, what, when, where, and why of her narrative. So I do understand where they're coming from and why they feel that it's important to bring this out. They also have stated in this letter that these stunning revelations make clear that the complaint filed by plaintiff's attorney, Anthony Buzbee, therefore, had no factual basis whatsoever. Even Mr. Buzbee is walking back the complaint he put his name to, excusing these glaring inaccuracies by pointing the finger at the case being referred by another firm who allegedly vetted the story before sending it over to them. The heinous allegations against Mr. Carter are patently false. And I will say that is a very commonly used legal expression when someone asserts that strongly that something is false. The lawyers are always like, that is patently false. I always think it's kind of a funny expression, like, what is patently false, I want to say. But like, yeah, that's a very common expression that is used in legal vernacular. Moving forward here, the letter goes on to state that the complaint that was filed by plaintiff's attorney, Anthony Buzbee, therefore had no factual basis whatsoever. The heinous allegations against Mr. Carter are patently false. In light of those developments, it is now clear that Mr. Buzbee signed the complaints and other filings in this case in violation of Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 11. Under that rule, an attorney who signs a document assumes, quote, an affirmative duty to conduct a reasonable inquiry into the facts and the law before filing. The attorney's signature, quote, denotes merit in the filing and, quote, sends a message to the district court that this document is to be taken seriously. Plaintiffs, so they cite a number of cases that have found that plaintiffs may not file a complaint in this court without having made a reasonable investigation of the facts. So then Jay-Z's attorney's letter goes on to state, in addition, attorneys who learn after filing a complaint that the factual assertions are false must immediately withdraw the claims. There's also an American Bar Association model rule of professional conduct that they're citing, which is 3.1, quote, a lawyer shall not bring or defend a proceeding or assert or controvert an issue therein unless there is a basis in law and fact for doing so that is not frivolous. And again, frivolous is another very commonly used legal terminology, a frivolous claim. Like, you filed this frivolous claim against me. Frivolous is like a false claim, a claim where there was no basis or no merit to be filing that particular claim. And Jay-Z's attorneys are saying, you know, Tony Buzbee is violating the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, most specifically Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 11, that requires him to have conducted a reasonable investigation into the facts and law prior to filing this complaint against Jay-Z. So these are some, you know, career impacting allegations that they're making. The lawyers are going back and forth about this. We also have here in this letter the Jay-Z's attorney, Alex Spiro, continues on by saying, given today's revelations, and he's referring to the NBC News report of December 13th, Mr. Buzbee almost certainly failed to undertake a reasonable inquiry into the facts before filing the complaint. He should never have brought the claims. At minimum, he should withdraw them now. Allowing these claims to remain pending even a moment longer not only harms Mr. Carter, his family, his businesses, his employees, and his legacy, it also impairs the integrity of the judicial system, thwarts the pursuit of justice, and silences the voices of true victims. Wow. If anything, what I will say is that Jay-Z's attorneys, they know how to write. They have some real poetic way of expressing themselves. I mean, that is a very strong way to word that. He said, by allowing these claims to remain pending even a moment longer not only harms Mr. Carter, his family, his businesses, his employees, and his legacy, it also impairs the integrity of the judicial system, thwarts the pursuit of justice, and silences the voices of true victims. Wow. He's doing his job. He's doing his job. He's getting paid well, I'm sure, by Jay-Z, and he's doing his job because he's essentially putting pressure. These attorneys at Quinn Emanuel on behalf of Jay-Z are putting pressure on Tony Buzbee and his firm to withdraw the complaints against Jay-Z. They're saying, listen, we're going to bring you into this fray. We are going to bring you in. You didn't do your proper investigation. You didn't do what you were supposed to do to be able to bring these claims in the first place against Jay-Z, and you are irreparably harming his reputation, his businesses, his employees, his family. I mean, I would not want to be Tony Buzbee right now. So moving forward, the attorneys for Jay-Z, Quinn Emanuel, further state that it appears that Mr. Buzbee has attempted to circumvent the authority of this court to enforce Rule 11 and the associated obligations by declining to seek admission to this court before signing pleadings and other documents. Mr. Buzbee is not licensed to practice law in this court, and he has not sought, let alone obtained, admission pro hoc vice. Yet, in the nearly 8 weeks since he initiated this proceeding, Mr. Buzbee has filed a complaint in this matter that was signed solely by him using an /S signature, signed the amended complaint alongside other counsel that added Mr. Carter as a defendant, and noticed a motion for the plaintiff to proceed anonymously, accompanied by a supporting brief and a declaration once again signed only by him, most recently on December 10th, 2024. Mr. Buzbee filed a letter which he also signed alone. Now, that's an interesting piece of the puzzle. So what they're talking about, the term pro hoc vice is, so when you are an attorney, you have to be actually approved to be admitted to practice in certain courts. So there are certain attorneys that are admitted to practice law before the United States Supreme Court. There are other attorneys who are admitted to practice before the Third Circuit, the United States circuit courts, or different trial courts. If you are from a different state, you also have to be admitted pro hoc vice. It's called pro hoc vice. You have to be admitted into the other court that is out of state. So you have to have approval by the court to practice there, because law is very jurisdictional, friends. Like when you have like a license with a particular state, you are licensed to practice in that state. If you're practicing in a different state, you need permission from the court to be in that court. And there are certain requirements that you have to meet. Some of it relates to experience. There are certain things that you have to, certain requirements that you have to meet in order to practice before and be admitted to practice before different courts. So this case against Jay-Z was filed, it is filed in federal court. So what Quinn Emanuel, Jay-Z's attorneys, are saying is, they're saying Tony Buzbee is signing off letters. He's signing off pleadings electronically in this case, but he is not admitted pro hoc vice to be practicing in this federal court. I mean, that's a legit argument. Like, that's a valid position. What do you think, friends? And why wouldn't he just, why wouldn't he just go through that procedure? It's a fairly straightforward procedure to apply to be admitted pro hoc vice. Why wouldn't you do that? So it's an interesting point, and I think that they're raising some very interesting arguments on behalf of Jay-Z. Jay-Z's attorneys need to give the court just enough pause to look at this scrupulously and take a hard look at what's going on here. And listen, none of this is to minimize the alleged victim. None of this is to minimize what her allegations are, because ultimately, at the end of the day, who knows? She may prevail. She may prove her case. But as of right now, we are at the very beginning stages of this lawsuit, where this new refiled lawsuit that has pulled Jay-Z into this mix. So we cannot make any assumptions, okay, as to what has transpired. So then, moving along, Jay-Z's attorney, Alex Spiro, states that Mr. Buzbee's failure to obtain admission to the bar of this court is a transparent attempt to circumvent the basic requirements of Rule 11 and the rules of professional conduct. Admission subjects an attorney to the jurisdiction of the court and to sanctions for signed pleadings that are not grounded in the facts and the law. So Mr. Buzbee then appears to have strategically declined to seek admission in order to avoid sanctions for a complaint that he knew had no factual basis. Interesting. Very interesting. So they're basically saying, so Jay-Z's attorneys are saying, hey, look, Your Honor, if Mr. Buzbee had applied properly to be admitted pro hoc vice practice before you in this federal court, he would be subject to sanctions and he would be subject to punishment for, filing a false, non-meritorious filing that he failed to investigate in pursuant to Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 11. But then he strategically decided not to. He strategically chose not to apply for admission, and therefore to try to escape some type of liability for filing these false pleadings. Now, that argument, it might be a little bit of a stretch. And the reason why is because regardless, the court should be holding him accountable for violating the federal rules, because the federal rules of civil procedure apply to all proceedings in every federal court in this nation. They do not just apply to this one specific federal court. So I think Quinn Emanuel may be over dramatizing it a bit, because the court can still certainly, in my opinion, still hold Tony Buzbee responsible for, if it turns out that he violated Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 11 and he didn't conduct a reasonable investigation into the truthfulness of the facts and the law before he filed this case on behalf of this alleged victim of Jay-Z. However, we also have that whole other component that I talked to you about earlier, which is the state ethics review boards. So the attorney ethics review boards in each state can also take action. So it's going to be interesting. And because this case was filed in New York, then it could also maybe be not just Texas that's an impacted jurisdiction, which is Tony Buzbee is based out of Houston in Texas, but also New York is impacted by his actions as well, arguably. So moving back to this letter that has been filed by Jay-Z's attorneys, this letter goes on to state that given these facts, Mr. Carter intends to file immediately a motion to strike the first amended complaint under Rules 11C2 and 12F. He respectfully requests that the court shorten the filing deadline for that motion from 21 days to 1 day from the date of service in light of today's stunning public disclosures and the severe ongoing harm to Mr. Carter's reputation. And so he cites Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 11C2, Judge Torres, and also Judge Torres' individual practices in civil cases. They're also citing her rules, because every federal judge has their own set of rules on how they conduct their civil cases. So that's really interesting. Basically, the under normal procedure, there would be 21 days as the deadline from the date of service to be able to file a response. And Jay-Z's attorneys have asked the court to shorten that deadline to 1 day so that Tony Buzbee only has 1 day to respond. And Jay-Z's attorneys are saying, listen, this case has absolutely irreparable harm and damage to our client's reputation. So we absolutely need to protect his reputation, and we need to shorten that deadline. And I do hear where they're coming from, friends. I mean, do you agree? Because, with Jay-Z, he has built his reputation as being such a family man. I mean, he's married to Beyonce. They have young children. He has really built up this reputation as not just a very solid businessman, but that he is a strong family man as well. He's built up this reputation as being a protector of children. He says, I came out of the projects of Brooklyn. I survived. I protect children. I don't exploit them. I mean, this has really far-reaching consequences for Jay-Z. The fact that he was even named in this. And listen, I don't stand here making any judgments about whether or not these allegations are true or false. That's going to be the job of the jury. That's going to be the job of the fact finder. Not for me to say. After review of all the evidence, they will make their conclusions if this case goes to trial. But what I will say is that if in the end it turns out that these allegations are not true, this has had just absolutely irreparable impact on Jay-Z. I mean, and that's why he did file the extortion lawsuit against Tony Buzbee. And he filed a claim for intentional infliction of emotional distress, because lawyers do have the obligation. We do, as attorneys, have the obligation to research claims before we file them. And if it turns out that, these inconsistencies in what Tony Buzbee's firm filed on behalf of this alleged victim are not accurate, and that these kind of inconsistencies don't match up to what she's telling the news media, it absolutely is fair and their job for Jay-Z's attorneys to be raising that to the public and to be, basically trying to, in the media, clear his name and say, listen, judge, you need to take a closer look at this. Now, Tony Buzbee, as we saw, he has responded by saying, well, we allegedly had this private investigator who, did a background check on this woman, did fact checking, even though this pleading was drafted by a different firm. So Tony Buzbee is basically saying a different firm who had this case initially before I took over, they drafted the pleadings, but we investigated the allegations before we filed this suit naming Jay-Z to make sure that they were accurate. So it will be, friends, it will be yet to be seen as to whether, it will be, that's why here I find this case to be very important. This case is very important, not only because it implicates, a very serious alleged offense, but it also implicates that if this offense did not occur, it implicates very serious harm to someone's reputation. And it also implicates attorney conduct. And both firms, Tony Buzbee's firm and Jay-Z's attorneys, Quinn Emanuel, both firms have been going back and forth at each other, alleging misconduct on behalf of the other party, because Tony Buzbee is allegedly threatening that there have been alleged misconduct of Quinn Emanuel, Jay-Z's attorneys, that he says he'll bring to light soon. So this case is definitely a case to watch, friends. I'm going to be covering this case every day here on this channel via live streams, videos, YouTube shorts. Please subscribe to the channel if you want to stay updated. It helps grow our channel, helps show support, and it helps me continue to be here with you guys every week for our live streams. I'm going to be continuing to cover this story, also continuing to cover the Sean Diddy Combs. I'm going to be doing an additional live stream shortly about Sean Diddy Combs, how he has, it appears to be that he has given up his search for bail. He was previously applying for pretrial release pending his May jury trial. He has since seemed to give up that request to be released on bail because several judges have denied his request. So he seems to be kind of resigned to the fact that he is going to be preparing for his trial from the confines of the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn until he gets his days in court, where he's going to be before a jury of his peers. Maybe not of his peers. He might not be used to associating with the individuals who will be on the jury, but a jury of peers who will be deciding his fate if this goes to trial in his federal prosecution for sex trafficking and also racketeering and other claims. He has a slew of civil suits. Sean Diddy Combs has a slew of civil suits that he is fighting against alleged victims who have filed against him for money damages, emotional distress, things of that nature. So we're going to be covering it all on this channel. Also continuing to cover the Vanderpump Rules drama. We have Tom Sandoval, who's just announced recently that he's fired his attorneys. He's going to be representing himself. And oh, Madonna, like, I can't even imagine Tom Sandoval representing himself because, friends, it is hard. People don't give attorneys enough credit. It is very difficult to stand up in court and properly represent yourself because there are so many procedural rules that need to be followed. And if you don't follow the procedural rules that apply to your case and all of the case deadlines and all of because there's not just rules that govern the overall courts, like, for example, the federal rules of civil procedure. Then we have the evidence rules. Then we also have the local rules because each court has specific local rules. Every judge has their own civil practice rules that they set forth for how they conduct things in their courtroom. So it is a very difficult job to self-represent yourself, especially in this case where Tom Sandoval is going up against extremely experienced entertainment lawyers that are representing Rachel Leviss. Ariana also has counsel, because she was brought into this mix as well. So it is definitely, there's so much right now to watch, friends. There's so much entertainment and celebrity news and lawsuits that are happening right now. We're going to be covering all of it here on the channel. So hit the subscribe button if you're looking forward to participating on our lives. We are still running the giveaway, friends, because we wanted to celebrate that our very young channel has reached over 30,000 views. So we are still running our giveaway. That giveaway video is posted to our channel page. You can go ahead and hit the link in that description box and go ahead and enter our giveaway. And at the end of the month, we're going to be giving away an Amazon gift card to celebrate the launch of our new channel here. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I will be back live later on this afternoon, and I look forward to seeing you guys then. Bye-bye now.